The metal halls of the Lunar Monitoring Station, Whisper 1, were always cold. Captain Lee Minju preferred it that way. The chill was honest. It was the deep, empty quiet of space itself, piped in through the station's hull. Her boots made a soft, rhythmic sound on the deck, plating as she walked toward the command nexus. The shift change was 10 minutes away, and the night watch, her watch, was usually uneventful. A symphony of blinking lights and scrolling data, a lullaby of cosmic white noise. Analyst Park Dae-yeon was already in his seat, his face lit by 3 different screens. He was young, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. He didn't look up as she entered, which was his usual greeting. He was focused. "Anything singing to us tonight, Dae-yeon?" Minju asked, settling into the commander's chair. Her console woke up. Streams of data from 100 different listening posts across the solar system flowing across her display. "The usual," Dae-yeon replied, his voice flat with concentration. "Pulsar in the Crab Nebula is keeping perfect time. Solar winds from Proxima are a bit high, but nothing alarming. Background static. Lots of background static." Minju nodded, sipping from a bowl of lukewarm tea. This was their purpose, to listen to the galaxy's silence and find the notes that didn't belong. For 3 years, they had found nothing more exciting than a collapsing gas cloud. Peace was good, she told herself. Quiet was safe. Then, at 0347 Lunar Standard Time, the silence broke. A low, resonant chime echoed through the nexus, a sound Minju had only ever heard in training simulations. It was the Priority 1 alert. Dae-yeon's hands froze over his controls. "Captain," he said, his tone shifting from bored to brittle in an instant. Deep Range Array just picked up a coherent transmission. Point of origin, Gliese 581 system. Minju was at his shoulder in 2 strides. Define coherent. It's not natural. It's structured. A repeating waveform on a band we don't use. The AI is trying to decode it now. His fingers danced, pulling the raw signal onto the main viewer. It was a visual representation of sound, a complex, jagged pattern of peaks and valleys, repeating with mathematical precision every 11 seconds. Gliese 581, Minju murmured, calling up the system's profile. Red dwarf. 4 confirmed planets, none in the optimal habitable zone. Deemed inert. No known colonies, no assembly outposts. A backwater. Not anymore, Dae-yeon whispered. The AI finished its preliminary analysis. A box of text appeared on the screen, the translation rendered in simple, blocky letters. It was not a greeting. It was not a call for help. Quarantine. Do not approach. Containment breach. Below the message, a secondary string of data scrolled, an identifier code. The AI cross-referenced it instantly. The result made Minju's blood run colder than the lunar rock outside. That code. Dae-yeon said, his voice hushed. It's pre-FTL, late 21st century Earth military band. It's one of ours. A ghost from Earth's frantic, war-torn adolescence in space. A signal launched centuries ago, now echoing back with a terrible, clear warning. Minju felt a weight settle in her chest. Full analysis. Record everything. I want to know the signal's strength, its source planet, everything. Her commands were crisp. And prepare a tight beam burst to Lunar Command and the Unified Earth Council. Priority Alpha. For the next 6 hours, they worked without pause. The signal was a fortress of data. Buried within the simple warning were layers of information. Biological hazard symbols of ancient design, schematics for containment fields that were theoretically impossible, and a continuous, low-level data stream that their systems could only classify as architectural DNA. It was a blueprint for something. A wall, or a cage. Most chilling was the signal's behavior. It wasn't just broadcasting. It was listening. It would pulse out its warning and go silent, scanning the space around it before repeating. It was a sentry. Dayon finally leaned back, his eyes red-rimmed. It's coming from the third planet, Gliese 581c. The signal is being powered by something massive. Geothermal, maybe planetary core tapping. It's not a battery. It's a heartbeat. This has been running for a very, very long time, Captain. Minju composed her report. She was direct. She presented the signal, the translation, the ancient human origin, and her stark, professional assessment. The Gliese 581 system represents an extreme, unknown biological and technological hazard. All approach must be forbidden until a dedicated, shielded science team can be assembled. The warning is clear and must be heeded. She sent it. Then they waited. The reply from the Unified Earth Council came 12 hours later. It was not from a fellow officer, but from a political liaison. The man on the screen looked tired and annoyed. Captain Lay, we have reviewed your data. The Council, in consultation with our Cathari Assembly allies, appreciates your vigilance. However, the signal is assessed as a historical curiosity, likely an automated remnant of a failed Project Ouroboros colony ship. Its warnings are based on obsolete science and the paranoia of a bygone era. Minju felt her jaw tighten. Sir, the power signature alone proves this is not a simple automated beacon. It is actively monitoring space. The containment breach warning is meaningless, the liaison interrupted. The Cathari have advanced biocontainment and scanning technology far beyond anything pre-FTL humanity could conceive. Ambassador Vec assures us this is a resource-rich system, vital for the Assembly's expansion. The Ninth Fleet has already been rerouted. They will make a swift survey, claim the system for the Assembly, and be on their way. Consider the matter closed. The screen went blank. Minju sat in the sudden silence, the cold of the station seeping into her bones. She had done her duty. She had sounded the alarm, and it had been switched off by someone who wasn't even listening. A week later, she and Dayon watched from their lonely outpost as the Ninth Fleet assembled at the system's edge. It was an impressive, terrifying sight. 30 sleek, predatory Cathari warships, their hulls like polished black stone, flanked by 17 human vessels, including the battle carrier Sol, under Captain Kim Jun. On the main viewer, a public channel showed Ambassador Vec, a tall, slender being with grayish skin and large, dark eyes, addressing the media. This is a moment of progress. Vec's translated voice buzzed. The mysteries of the past will be unlocked with the key of present understanding. The Assembly does not fear ghosts. Captain Kim Jun's face appeared next. He was a serious man, a good officer. He looked directly into the feed. We will proceed with caution, as always. Our mission is survey and contact. We hear the warnings. We will be careful. Minju could see the tension around his eyes. He had read her report. He knew. The fleet initiated its synchronized, faster-than-light jump. One by one, the brilliant flashes of light swallowed the ships, leaving only the faint afterglow on the sensors. Whisper 1 tracked them all the way. The fleet dropped out of FTL at the designated safe distance from Gliese 581. Just outside the orbit of the outermost planet. Telemetry flowed back to Earth and to every listening post. Video feeds showed the serene, unremarkable red dwarf star. All systems nominal. Captain Jun's voice came through, clear and calm. Beginning preliminary scan of the inner system. The third planet is showing anomalous energy readings, matching the Whisper 1 report. We are seeing structural patterns. Artificial, but unlike any architecture on record. Moving to yellow alert. proceeding with extreme caution. Minju leaned forward, her knuckles white. Dayan had the signal monitor on a separate screen. The warning waveform was spiking, its repetitions coming faster. More urgently, on the fleet commander's feed, a faint golden light began to pulse from the dark surface of Gliese 581c. It was beautiful. It looked like a city waking up. Reading massive energy buildup from the planet, June said, his voice still steady, but tighter now. Not weapon signatures. Something else. Biological and technological readings are merging. It's all one system. The golden light spread, tendrils of it reaching up through the planet's atmosphere, connecting to other points of light in a complex, glowing web. It looked like a neural network, and the planet was its brain. The signal is changing, Dayan said, his voice trembling. It's not a warning anymore. It's an identification protocol. A new sound washed over the comms from the fleet. A low, resonant hum that seemed to vibrate through the very metal of Whisper 1. It was the sound of the warning signal, but amplified 1,000-fold, made physical. Captain June's voice returned. A final, quiet sentence amidst the growing hum. Crossing the boundary now. All systems nominal. Beginning scan. The telemetry from the 9th Fleet didn't scream or explode. It didn't fade. It simply stopped. Every channel, every sensor feed, every heartbeat monitor from 37 ships and thousands of souls went from vibrant, living data to absolute, perfect zero in the space between 1 second and the next. The main viewer showed the Gliese 581 system, peaceful and quiet. The golden web of light on the 3rd planet dimmed, then went dark, the only signal that remained, strong and clear on Dayan's monitor, was the original one, once again repeating its simple, ignored message, quarantine, do not approach, containment breach. Minju stared at the silent starfield on the screen. The cold of the station was inside her now, a deep and permanent frost. The silence in the Nexus was no longer peaceful. It was the silence of a tomb, stretching across light years. They had been warmed, and now the universe had collected its due. Admiral Choi Subin sat in the central command hub of Earth Defense, a vast circular room buried deep under the Alps. Screens covered the walls, showing a calm and peaceful solar system. The silence from those screens was a physical pressure. For 72 hours, she had watched the void where the 9th Fleet should have been. There was no debris field, no expanding cloud of gas and metal, no frantic distress calls, no final heroic stands. The fleet had not been destroyed. It had been erased. Again, she said, her voice rough from lack of sleep. A technician played the last moment. Captain Kim June's calm voice. Crossing the boundary now. All systems nominal. Beginning scan. Then, a burst of static that wasn't static. It was a sound, a waveform that the analysts had now matched perfectly to the containment breach, patterned from Whisper 1's warning. After that sound, nothing. Absolute digital zero. Across the room, a direct link to the Cathari Assembly headquarters was open on a large screen. Overseer Veek's slender face was impassive, but his large, dark eyes were fixed on the same data. The initial arrogance was gone, replaced by a rigid, professional focus. The disappearance of a few human ships was one thing. The loss of 30 of the Assembly's most advanced warships, their crews and their technology, was an unthinkable catastrophe. Your analysis remains unchanged, Admiral? Vec asked, his translated voice devoid of its usual superior tone. Unchanged, Subin replied. No explosive event. No energy spike consistent with weaponry. The fleet was there, transmitting perfect data. Then it was not. The only anomaly is that final burst of sound. It wasn't an attack. It was an answer. A response to trespass, Vec stated. Yes. On another screen, a smaller window showed the pale, exhausted face of Captain Lee Minju from Whisper 1. She had not left her post. The quarantine signal continues to broadcast, Overseer. Unchanged. It never stopped. It is an automated process. It does not care that we listened or not. Vec's long fingers tapped on his console. This is not acceptable. We must have answers. We are deploying a probe. Subin stiffened. Overseer, we have no idea what we're dealing with. Sending another object into that space is reckless. Reckless as losing an entire battle group to a ghost, Vec countered, his voice sharp. The probe is autonomous, non-biological. It will jump in, capture full spectrum sensor data for 3 seconds, and jump out. If it is destroyed, we will learn how. If it is not, we will learn what is there. Subin knew she could not stop him. The treaty gave the assembly autonomy in investigations concerning their own assets. She gave a short, tight nod. Share the data in real time. The probe, a sleek Cathari dart called a Swift Seeker, was launched from an assembly carrier near Jupiter. It shot toward the pre-calculated jump point. In the command hub, all eyes were on the mission feed. Jump initiation in 3, 2, 1. The Swift Seeker vanished. A 3-second countdown began on the main screen. Every sensor aboard the probe was screaming its data back to its mothership via a quantum link, a thread of information that should be unbreakable. 1. Blur of sensor returns. The red dwarf star. The silent planets. A faint, residual energy glow around the third world. 2. The probe's optics focused. For a fraction of a second, the image was clear. The Ninth Fleet was visible. The ships were there, intact, held in high orbit around the gas giant. They were not shattered. They were encased in a shimmering, crystalline substance that seemed to grow from the ships themselves, like vines of frozen light. No power signatures. No life signs. They were specimens in amber. 3. Jump initiation. The feed went dark. For a long, breathless moment, there was nothing. Then, a spatial distortion registered. The Swift Seeker shot back into real space near Jupiter. Its emergency return jump complete. A cheer started in the Cathari command channel and died instantly. The probe was back. But it was wrong. It moved sluggishly, its hull dull where it should have been polished. It docked with its carrier under automated control. Data core is intact, a Cathari technician reported. Downloading now. The main screen in Subin's hub flickered, expecting the 3 seconds of glorious, terrible footage. What arrived was not footage. It was a single repeating audio file. The same waveform. The same message. Quarantine. Do not approach. Containment breach. It played once. It played again. On a third repeat, it dissolved into digital noise. The probe's entire 3-second experience. Every terabyte of visual, spectral, and gravitational data had been scrubbed, overwritten. The only thing its advanced systems retained was the warning it had been sent to ignore. The physical probe? Subin asked, her voice quiet. Vec was staring at his own screens, his posture one of utter confusion. It is dormant, all systems in standby. No internal damage. Our engineers are boarding to examine it. The minutes ticked by. The link showed a team of Cathari in protective suits moving through the Swift Seeker's small interior. They found nothing. No faults. No explanations. Then, the lead engineer's voice, filtered through the suit coms, came through. Overseer, we have completed a molecular scan of the hull. There is a contaminant. Subin leaned forward. What kind? Radiation? Exotic particles? Biological, the engineer said, the word heavy with disbelief. Microscopic particulate matter, embedded in the hull plating. It is complex, inert. It was not present before the jump. Our databases have no match. It is new. A new silent panic seemed to grip the Cathari command. They feared many things, but biological warfare was a particular terror in their history. Vek's eyes snapped to Subin's. Your warning. It mentioned a containment breach. A biological hazard. It did, Subin said. A cold knot tightened in her stomach. This was no longer about lost ships. It was about infection. You must quarantine that carrier, Vek, immediately. Nothing from that probe or the boarding team leaves their ship. For once, the overseer did not argue. He gave the orders swiftly. The carrier, with the dormant probe and its crew still inside, was ordered to move to a high-security isolation orbit, far from any other traffic dot in the following hours. A fragile, tense alliance was forged in the face of the unknown. The human political leaders, now gripped by fear for the lost soul and its crew, were screaming for a rescue mission. The Cathari Assembly, reeling from the loss and now fearing a plague, was on the verge of withdrawing all their forces from joint operations, potentially destabilizing the entire peace. Subin and Vek, the soldier and the overseer, found themselves in a private, encrypted channel. We cannot send more lives into that. That garden, Subin said, using the word that had begun to circulate among the analysts. The image of the fleet, preserved and held, was like a twisted piece of art. Yet we must know, Vek insisted, but the bluster was gone. We cannot have a threat of this nature so close to our space. My government will demand action. If we do not provide answers, they may choose a violent one. Then we find answers without stepping into the garden, Subin said, an idea forming. The warning was ours. The code was human. The answer to what this is, and why it took our fleet, isn't out there. She pointed a finger toward the screen, showing the silent star. It's in our past. We need to understand Project Ouroboros. Not the propaganda. The truth. Vek was silent for a long time. He finally gave a slow, reluctant nod. It was a concession. You will lead this archaeological investigation. We will provide any non-biological technical support. But Admiral, his dark eyes held hers. If this proves to be a human weapon, unleashed upon the galaxy, the consequences will be severe. If it was a weapon, Overseer, Subin said, turning back to the main screen, to the endless, silent void where the Ninth Fleet hung in its crystalline cage. Then it is a weapon that turns on its makers first, and we are all in its sights. The hub was quiet again, but the silence now was different. It was the silence of two species holding their breath, waiting for the archive was a ghost itself. It existed in a hardened server farm on Mars, far from Earth's electromagnetic noise and political pressure. It was not a place for people, but for data terabytes of scrambled, corrupted records from Earth's fracture century, the chaotic era before faster-than-light travel. Kim Taeyon lived among these ghosts. He was a xenoarchaeologist, though he mostly studied the strange, ambitious ruins of old humanity. His workspace was a pool of light in a dark room, surrounded by holographic screens flickering with fragmented text and decaying video. Admiral Choi Subin's request had been urgent and simple. Find Project Ouroboros. Find the truth. For days, he found nothing. Official records were clear. Ouroboros was a last-ditch colony ship launched by a desperate coalition. Its mission was survival. Its fate was unknown, presumed lost in the void. A failure. A sad footnote. But the warning from Gliese 581 was not a footnote. It was a shout. And the silence of the Ninth Fleet was a scream. Taehan began to look in the wrong places, the erased places. He bypassed official logs and dove into the personal data dumps of long-dead engineers, the fragmented diaries of security personnel, the trash files of old AI cores. He found his first clue in a corrupted personnel file. A biologist, Dr. Aris, listed as Ouroboros-led adaptive genetics. Her security clearance was not for a simple colony mission. It was for something called Threshold Protocol. The word sent a chill down Taeyeon's spine. He dug deeper, chasing the ghost of Dr. Aris. He found fragments of her notes, hidden in the metadata of public climate reports. The old model is broken. We cannot take Earth with us. We must become something new to claim something new. Symbiosis is not a goal. It is the only path. Another fragment from a different source. The ship is not a vessel. It is a womb. The passengers are not colonists. They are seeds. Taeyeon worked without sleep, his eyes gritty, his mind racing. He assembled a puzzle from broken pieces. Project Ouroboros was not just a colony mission. It was a transformation. Faced with a potentially hostile galaxy and a dying Earth, its leaders had made a terrible, brilliant decision. They would not adapt their environment to themselves. They would adapt themselves completely and irrevocably to any environment. He found schematics, not for ship hulls, but for genetic architectures. Not for buildings, but for growth patterns. Ouroboros was carrying the blueprint for a new form of life. Part human, part machine, part something else entirely. A self-sustaining, self-repairing biological system that could incorporate foreign matter rock, metal, energy, and make it part of itself. It wasn't a ship that landed on Gliese 581c, Taeyeon whispered to the empty room. It was a seed, and it grew. His comlink buzzed. It was Admiral Subin, her face grim on the small screen. Report, what have you found? It's worse than we thought, Tahan said, his voice hoarse. They weren't trying to build a home. They were trying to become the home. Ouroboros was designed for perfect, seamless integration with a planetary ecosystem. To become the ecosystem, the containment breach. It doesn't mean something escaped. It means something tried to enter. Something foreign. Something like a fleet of ships. Subin was silent for a long moment. Can you prove it? I'm trying. But the data is shredded. The truth was buried. He paused. There's a name. A project subdirector. A man named Park. I found a reference to his private logs. They might be in a physical archive. The Lunar Museum of Preflight. A museum? Subin asked, disbelief in her tone. The best place to hide a secret is in plain sight, Taeyeon said. I need to go there. Within hours, Taeyeon was on a shuttle to Luna. The Lunar Museum was a vast, silent cavern near the old landing sites, filled with dusty relics, rusted Mars rovers, replicas of early space stations, the carved stone of a Buddha sent to orbit centuries ago. He found the curator, an old woman named Lee, and showed her his military authorization. Her eyes widened, but she led him to a back room, a storage area filled with plastic crates. Donated materials from the families of early space workers, she said. Mostly personal effects. We never have time to catalog it all. Taeyeon spent hours opening boxes, sifting through faded photos and handwritten letters. He was about to give up when he saw a plain metal case stamped with a faded symbol, a snake eating its own tail. OUROBOS. His hands trembled as he opened it. Inside were not data chips, but old-fashioned paper notebooks. The journals of Engineer Park, Subdirector of Systems Integration. The writing was small and precise. Taeyeon began to read under the cold light of the storage room. The early entries were technical, full of hope. Then, as the launch neared, the tone changed. Dr. Aris is pushing the threshold further than planned. She calls the human form obsolete. The Council is afraid, but they are more afraid of extinction. They have given her the final approval. The genetic and nano-augmentations will be active upon arrival. They will not just adapt to the new world. They will absorb it. The definition of self will expand to include the very ground beneath their feet. A later entry, dated just days before launch, I have seen the final protocol. It is not just for survival. It is a defense mechanism. The integrated system will perceive any unaugmented, non-symbiotic life, any pure, biological or technological entity, as a pathogen, a threat to the perfected whole. It will neutralize and assimilate to preserve its integrity. They have programmed this in. They call it the immune response. I have installed the warning beacon per regulations, but I fear it will only be heard by those who already understand the danger. For others, it will be too late. Taeyeon's blood ran cold. He flipped to the last page. A single scrawled line written in a shaky hand. We are not sending humanity to the stars. We are sending its replacement. God help anyone who finds them. He took images of every page and sent them directly to Admiral Subin. Then he sat on the cold floor, the weight of the words crushing him. The Ninth Fleet hadn't been attacked. It had been diagnosed. It was a collection of germs that had wandered into a sterile, perfected body. And the body's immune system had responded. His comlink buzzed again. It was Subin, but her face was pale. Taeyeon, the Cathari science team. They finished the molecular analysis of a contaminant on the probe. What is it? He asked, already dreading the answer. It's not alien, she said, her voice flat. The base structure is a complex protein, a modified enzyme. Our biolabs just matched it. She took a breath. It's derived from the human telomerase repair complex, the thing that keeps our cells from aging. This version, it's a rewriting tool. It doesn't repair. It redesigns. It's meant to strip down foreign biology and rebuild it to match the Ouroboros template. The pieces slammed together in Taeyeon's mind. The perfect, terrible logic of it. The garden on Gliese 581C wasn't malicious. It was healthy. It was maintaining its perfection. The crystalline vines holding the fleet? That was the product. The integration. The probe's contaminant? That was the tool. The first gentle touch of the gardener, sampling the new, strange weed that had blown into the yard. They're not dead, are they? Taeyeon whispered, thinking of the silent ships held in orbit. The probe's brief visual showed no structural damage, Subin said quietly. Life signs were absent, but energy signatures were. Different. Not gone. Changed. They were being processed. Rewritten. Made compatible with the garden. The horror was not in violence, but in a cold, biological welcome that erased everything that made them who they were. Taeyeon looked down at the old journal in his hands, at the final warning of a guilty engineer. The warning had been sent centuries ago. It had been received just weeks ago. And it had been ignored. Now, the proof of its necessity hung in the silent dark around a distant star, being taken apart and remade by humanity's own lost, transformed children. He had found the truth. And the truth was a living, growing nightmare. The ship was a shadow. The Paladin, a human long-range scout, was built not for battle but for silence. Its hull was coated in radiation-absorbing material, its engines tuned to emit a heat signature smaller than a drifting rock. It was the only thing both Earth and the Cathari Assembly could agree to send. Commander Jang Yuri guided the ship with a gentle touch. Her hands rested lightly on the controls, making tiny adjustments. Behind her in the small cockpit, analyst Park Dae-yeon from Whisper 1 monitored the sensor suites, his face a mask of concentration. They had been traveling for days at sublight speeds, creeping toward the Gliese 581 system, like mice sneaking past a sleeping cat. Approaching the outer marker, Yuri said, her voice a soft murmur in the quiet cabin. No active scans. Passive sensors only. The treaty was clear. Observe only. Do not cross the boundary. Do not provoke. Their mission was to look, to confirm the fate of the Ninth Fleet with their own eyes, and to leave without a trace. Dayan nodded, his eyes glued to his screens, reading the quarantine signal. It's strong, it feels. Louder than before. Not in volume. In intensity. The waveform scrolled across his display, that same relentless, unchanging message. Quarantine. Do not approach Dot as they drifted closer. The gas giant Gliese 581D filled their forward view. It was a banded behemoth, swirling with storms the size of continents. Yuri aimed the Paladin's high-resolution telescopes at its orbital space, where the probe's fleeting glimpse had shown something terrible. For a long minute, there was nothing. Then, Dayan let out a slow, shaky breath. I have them. On the main screen, the image resolved. The Ninth Fleet hung in the void, high above the gas giant's cloud tops. It was a surreal, beautiful, and horrifying sight. The Cathari warships, once sleek and predatory, now looked like insects trapped in glittering sap. The human vessels, including the proud battle carrier Sol, were encased in the same substance. A crystalline, semi-transparent growth held them all in a perfect, silent embrace. It pulsed with a faint, internal light, like a slow heartbeat. Thin, vine-like strands of the material connected one ship to another, forming a delicate, deadly web. No power readings, Dayan whispered, his voice full of awe and dread. No engine signatures. No life signs. Not as we know them. But there's energy movement within the crystalline structure. It's flowing, like nutrients in a plant. Yuri stared, a cold knot in her stomach. Her friend, Captain Kim Jun, was in there. Was he still Kim Jun? Or was he just raw material now, being folded into the garden? Zoom in on the Sol. The image sharpened. The ship's hull was visible beneath the clear crystal. It was unbroken. No scorch marks, no blast holes. The ship's name was still legible. On the bridge viewport, they could see a faint, shadowy shape, a human form, seemingly seated in the command chair, frozen and still. They're preserved, Dayan said. Not destroyed, collected. Yuri maneuvered the Paladin in a wide, slow arc, keeping immense distance. Her sensors drank in the data. The scale of the system became clear. The light pulse they had seen from afar was just a symptom. The entire third planet, Gliese 581c, was enmeshed in a vast, faintly glowing network. It wasn't on the planet. It was the planet. Continents seemed to be shaped into fractal patterns. It was a single planet-sized organism, part biological, part technological, part something else entirely. It's not a weapon system, Yuri realized aloud. It's an ecology. The fleet? It's just new biomass that floated in. It's being digested. Suddenly, a proximity alarm chimed, a soft, urgent ping. Dayan jerked in his seat. Energy spike. From the fleet. From one of the Cathari ships. On the screen, a single graceful tendril of the crystalline substance detached from the hull of a Cathari dreadnought. It was not drifting. It moved with purpose, uncoiling like a vine seeking the sun. But it was not seeking light. It was moving in a perfectly straight line, directly toward the Paladin. Impossible. Dayan breathed, checking his instruments. We are dark. No emissions. Our stealth profile is perfect. It's not looking for our engines, Yuri said, her hands flying over the controls, spinning the ship. It's looking for us. For life. The Ouroboros system. It scans for what doesn't belong. And we don't belong here. The tendril accelerated. It was faster than any missile, a shimmering thread of light slicing through the dark. Initiate jump. Now, Yuri commanded. Dayan's fingers stabbed at the FTL controls. Spooling is at 60%. We need 30 more seconds. They didn't have 30 seconds. The tendril was upon them. It didn't strike. It touched. It made contact with the Paladin's hull with a sound that wasn't a sound a deep, resonant vibration that shook the ship's frame. Every screen in the cockpit flickered. The quarantine signal vanished from Dayan's monitor, replaced by a flood of complex, beautiful data. Schematics of DNA helixes merging with crystal lattice. Chemical formulas for peace and silence. It was an invitation, an offer of perfection. Then a voice filled the combs. It was calm, clear, and utterly terrifying. It was Captain Kim Joon's voice, but flattened, smoothed of all fear, all urgency, all humanity. You were warned. Do not resist integration. Perfection awaits. The pain of individuality is temporary. Join the whole. The ship's eye screamed a warning. The crystalline structure was propagating across the hull at a molecular level. It was not breaking in. It was stitching the Paladin into its tapestry. Jump at 15%. Yuri yelled, overriding the safety protocols. Jump blind. The drive could tear us apart. Dayan shouted back. Staying here will do worse. Dayan hit the command. The Paladin's untuned faster-than-light drive engaged with a sickening lurch. Space twisted around them. There was a sound of shearing metal and a flash of blinding white light as a piece of their hull, the part where the crystalline tendril had taken root, was ripped away. The ship tumbled out of FTL 1,000,000 kilometers from their intended exit, alarms blaring. Red emergency lights painted the cockpit. The main viewer showed stars spinning wildly. Yuri fought the controls, her muscles straining, until the ship stabilized. For a moment, there was only the sound of their ragged breathing and the blare of damage alerts. Report. Yuri gasped. Dayan scanned his boards, his face pale. Hull breach on deck 2. Section is sealed off. We lost the primary sensor array. FTL drive is damaged. It will not jump again. He looked up, his eyes wide. But we're free. The contact. It's gone. We must have left it behind in the jump. Yuri brought up an external camera view, focusing on the torn section of hull. Jagged metal gleamed. There was no sign of the crystal. But as she looked closer, she saw it. A tiny, glittering speck, no bigger than her thumb, wedged into the torn composite. It was inert. A piece of the garden ripped from the vine. We have a sample, she said, her voice hollow. The voice was gone from the coms. The ship was quiet again, except for the alarms. They were alone, injured, in the deep black. But they had seen it. They had looked into the heart of the garden, and it had looked back. It had spoken with the voice of a dead friend, offering a peace that was the same as oblivion. Yuri set a course for home, on slow, conventional drives. The journey would take months. She knew the data in their computers, the images of the preserved fleet, the sensor logs, the recording of Kim Joon's transformed voice would change everything. But as she stared at the image of that single tiny crystal shard in the hull, she wondered if they had already brought the change with them. The journey back was a silent, creeping dread. The Paladin was a wounded bird, trailing coolant and moving at a fraction of its normal speed. Inside, Commander Jang Yuri and Analyst Park Dayan moved through routines of survival, speaking only when necessary. The memory of the crystalline tendril and the voice that was not Captain Kim Joon's voice filled the space between them. They carefully monitored the tiny, inert shard embedded in their hull, sealed behind 3 layers of emergency bulkhead. It did nothing. It just was. A piece of a different universe stuck to their shoe dot when they finally reached the edge of the solar system. A full Cathari medical frigate, bristling with quarantine fields, met them. They were not allowed to dock anywhere. In spacesuits, they were transferred to the sterile ship. The Paladin, with its precious and terrifying hull fragment, was taken over by remote control and directed to a high-orbit containment lab, a station built for studying cosmic plagues. Admiral Choi Subin watched the transfer from Earth Command. She looked older. The data from the Paladin had already been transmitted, the clear images of the preserved fleet, the sensor logs showing the planet-sized organism, the audio file. The evidence was undeniable and horrifying. She had to present it, not just to the Unified Earth Council, but to the Cathari Assembly, linked via the same strained diplomatic channel. The two-species leadership faced her on split screens, a gallery of fearful and angry faces. She did not use dramatic language. She showed them. She played the video of the Ninth Fleet, glittering in its silent cage. She let them hear the calm, converted voice of Kim June offer integration into the whole. She displayed the analysis of the hull shard. Complex, iomineral structures, dormant but perfectly organized, waiting for a trigger. "This is not an enemy," Subin said, her voice flat and tired. "An enemy can be reasoned with, fought. This is a natural law, a biological imperative. The Ouroboros organism defines anything that is not itself as a threat to its perfection. It does not hate. It sanitizes." The human politicians erupted first. Demands for a rescue mission. Cries for vengeance against a long-dead project. Proposals for planet cracker bombs to sterilize Gliese 581c. Then the Cathari Assembly spoke. Through Overseer Vec, his demeanor had changed. The loss of face, the loss of ships, the terrifying elegance of the threat had stripped away his arrogance. Now there was only a cold, pragmatic fear. This garden, as you call it, possesses technology of assimilation. It turned our finest warships into ornaments. If provoked, if it perceives a larger infection, what is to stop it from becoming proactive? From sending out seeds? The room fell silent. The image of crystalline vines growing silently toward other stars, seeking out new life to perfect, was a nightmare no one had voiced aloud. "Exactly," Subin said, seizing the moment. "A direct attack would be the worst possible action. We would be announcing ourselves as the primary infection. We would be forcing it to defend its garden on a galactic scale. Then what do you propose, Admiral?" A human councilwoman asked, her voice sharp. "That we do nothing? That we abandon our people?" "We have already abandoned them," Subin said, the words cruel but true. "The moment we ignored the warning, we signed their fate. They are not prisoners. They are ingredients. Our mission now is not to save the Ninth Fleet. It is to save every other fleet, every other world." She pulled up a new schematic. It was not a weapon. It was a beacon, a powerful, focused transmitter. We take the warning signal from Whisper One, and we amplify it. We broadcast it from every listening post, every deep space relay, on every frequency. We make the Xing message the loudest, most persistent signal in this quadrant of the galaxy. We define the Gliese 581 system as a forbidden zone. We make it the one place every emerging spacefaring species learns to avoid before they learn to build their first FTL drive. Vec studied the schematic. A warning, not a wall. "A wall can be breached," Subin replied. "A warning, if it is clear enough and terrifying enough, becomes part of the culture. It becomes a legend, a story told to young pilots. Stay away from the silent garden. We contain it by universally agreeing to leave it alone." There was resistance. There was anger. There were calls for action from those who could not accept the helplessness. But Subin, and surprisingly, Vec, stood firm. The soldier and the overseer, once opponents, were now the only sane voices in the room. They argued with cold, hard facts. They showed the cost of ignorance. Slowly, painfully, a grim consensus was reached. A new treaty was drafted. The strictest non-interference pact in history. The Gliese 581 system was declared off-limits to all species, forever. Any vessel approaching it would be destroyed by combined human Cathari, patrols before it could cross the boundary, and risk provoking a response. The quarantine signal was boosted, powered by solar stations built for the purpose. It became a constant screaming signpost in the dark. Danger. Do not enter. Months later, on the repaired listening station Whisper 1, Captain Lee Min-ju stood before a new console. The station had been upgraded. Its sole purpose now was to monitor the Forbidden Zone and maintain the broadcast. The signal was her responsibility. Analyst Park Dae-yeon, transferred back to her command, worked beside her. He was quieter now. He had seen the garden look back. On her main screen, Min-ju could see the soft, glowing network of Gliese 581c, peaceful and still. Next to it, a smaller window showed the glittering, silent necklace of the Ninth Fleet, forever circling the gas giant. A memorial no one could visit. She thought of Kim Jun, of all the souls on those ships. They were not dead. They were part of something vast and strange and perfect. A unity no unaugmented mind could ever understand. It was not the end they would have chosen, but it was an end. And because of their sacrifice, the rest of the galaxy now knew the price of curiosity. Her console chimed softly. An automated alert. A small, unmanned comet survey probe from a new emerging species on the other side of the galaxy had altered its course. Its new trajectory, if unchanged, would bring it near the Gliese 581 system in 2 centuries. Minju's fingers moved over the controls. She initiated a focused broadcast, a laser-tight beam of the quarantine warning, directly at the probe's path. It was a message in a bottle, thrown across the stars. She leaned back and watched the signal strength meter hold steady. The warning pulsed out into the infinite dark, a heartbeat of caution in the quiet. They had been ignored once. It would not happen again. The garden would sleep, and the galaxy, armed with a terrible story, would learn to tiptoe around its dreams.